So I wanted to walk you through this Kickstart Nutrition Toolkit. A lot of good stuff in there for you to check out. So here's all the kind of the different lessons, if you want to call it that. So there's the determine your calorie needs, and this essentially just goes through at least one way to determine how many calories you need for either fat loss or building muscle. This is not the only way. There's lots of ways. I just find this is a pretty easy starting point for a lot of people. And with any method you pick, so whether if you don't want to use this one either way, um, you still have to do some kind of experimentation. So you have to kind of adjust as you go. So this is just one way to start. I find it's a little bit easier instead of trying to use some online calculator or whatever. You can just use this range and use it in reference to your weight. So for example, if you want to lose weight, you can pick a number between 9 to 13. Pick something lower if you're wanting more aggressive, then higher if you're wanting something slower and be more sustainable, less restrictive. And then belly muscle, same kind of thing. With belly muscle, you just want to take into account these two things. So your activity level and training experience, because those will influence your ability to build muscle. So that's the kind of calorie section. Protein needs. So how much do you need per day? You can use the information here for, say, fat loss. It's 0.8 to 1.27 grams per pound, or a practical target of 120 to 160. So then this is how to track the food intake. So there's different ways to do it. You can use some tracking apps, good old pen and paper, photo tracking, or kind of a hybrid approach is usually where I recommend. And at some point, uh, you don't really want to be tracking forever, but here's a time and place to do some food tracking, or this alternate option is just no tracking. So you can use some kind of more hand portion kind of method. So just using some kind of reference from from a protein, carb, veggie, and a fat standpoint. And there's some examples of how that kind of applies. So those are the main portions there. I think the two more valuable components of this, like this is kind of the information, and here's the application aspect. So some sample meal plans. So fat loss, sample day, and then you click on here to actually get a range of kind of 7-day plans. So here's 1300 to 1400, 1500 to 1600, and so on. So these are meal plans I've made, and they're, it's a template per se, but they give you a pretty good idea. And to go and click on them, you can download them. But it gives you all the nutrition information, a grocery list if you were to follow this to a T, which you need to support that. And keep in mind, this is kind of great. This isn't a perfect grocery list. But you use your own kind of, I guess, intuition on things to maybe not get. So, for example, like Greek yogurt, you don't have to have the vanilla plus plain. If you don't like oat milk, you don't have to have oat milk. You can have regular cow's milk. So So I just use this as a rough guide at the minute. And then within this plan, there's also all the recipes. You don't need a recipe for banana, but it just gives you the serving size. And if you're curious for the nutrition information, so those meal plans, can be super helpful to kind of give you some initial guidance. So that's both for the fat loss and if you want to go and build muscle. So the idea is determine your calorie kind of needs and then go pick a meal plan to kind of use as a reference for, how you could eat. So if you're building muscle and maybe your calories are super high, you can click on this and you have a range from anything from 1900 to 4000. So it should be suitable for almost everyone. I'd say with all the clients I work with, no one's above 4,000. So, and then protein targets should almost be good for all of them. So, as an example, if you need, say 3,000, this one has 182 grams of protein. So they're all kind of scaled upwards. So as the calories increase, the protein tends to increase as well. With one caveat being probably around 3,000 is where the protein kind of tends to stay consistent at about 175 to 200. And the reason being for that is it's harder to get more calories in while also increasing protein because protein just makes you feel full. So if you're trying to increase calories while keeping protein consistently high, like with it, and by that I mean increasing, it tends to make it really challenging to eat enough food without feeling too full. So that's why those are kind of the same here. And then there's recipe ideas. So what I've done is I have a collection of recipes that you guys can all access. So it's high protein bowls, mason jar salads, something I call big ass salad. I just find with a lot of clients, you can use a big salad once a day. And that serves as a way to get a lot of good nutrition, but also as a way just to kind of have one good healthy meal per day that's very filling and tends to be lower in calories. So these are all examples that don't have too big of a calorie component. So what you'll see here is there's a bunch that you can choose from. These are just collections, so there's sometimes like this is an active collection, if that makes sense. So I'm adding things to it on a regular basis. This is a software I use for meal planning and recipe kind of collection for clients. So you'll have to use a little bit of your own kind of intuition and um, so for example, like here's a nutrition. You have to go and kind of find out which one works for you. They're not all a certain calorie range, but just some good ideas for air fryers, one pan sheets, so things where you're kind of cooking things all at once, meal prep recipes, so on and so forth. So just a really good kind of resource for you to kind of find some different recipes that will work for you. So, and then these should solve everything here, but this is just more of some kind of information. And then just some habits. So the habits are something I use a lot with clients. Instead of like the having the meal plans, they're great resources, and it's a great way to kind of establish early on like what your diet should look like. But what tends to work long term is developing these habits to reinforce your goal. So these are kind of default things that if you do these on a regular basis, the exact specifics of your meal plan approach don't have to be as tight, if you want to call it that. So just some things to kind of consider and some habits I use with clients for each goal. So if you have any questions about any of that, let me know. But this should be, I just wanted to kind of go over this nutrition toolkit as I don't know if many are as aware of what's in it because I've updated a few things. So